Heard someone talk about accidental achievements. You've never heard someone that got to the top of the mountain and somebody asked them, how did you get there? Kind of look confused and say, I have no idea. They know how they got there. The reason they know how they got there is because they had to walk all the way up the mountain. Nobody lifted them. There were no shortcuts. There's not an elevator. There's not an escalator. It's all effort that gets you to the top of the mountain. Up the mountain. Nobody lifted them. There were no shortcuts. There's not an elevator. There's not an escalator. It's all effort that gets you to the top of the mountain. What I want you to understand is that inspiration does a lot better when it's coupled with perspiration. There are a whole lot of people, they want to be inspired in great things, but they don't want to do the hard work to achieve those great things. It's not either or, it's both and. So I really trust today that you will just kind of roll up your sleeves, look at something you haven't tackled for a while, dive in. You'll be amazed that once after you do the work, you get inspired. Don't wait to get inspired before you do the work.
Anesthesia that deadens the pain of stupidity. Pride is the burden of a foolish person. You'll never be a great shipmate. You'll never be a great executive. You'll never be a great teammate if it's all about you. You'll never be a great supervisor or council person if it's all about you. You'll never be a great staff member if it's all about you. Rather, make sure that servant's towel is every day of your life. You find your broom. You grow your influence that way. That way you're attracting people so that you can impact them. Final lesson. Son, if you're going to do a job, do it right. I don't have to tell you all that, Cal Maritime, and I know grammatically that's not correct. It ought to be do it well, but I like that old school ghetto kind of do it the right way. I'm thinking about a little boy in Los Angeles. All he wants to do is play Little League baseball. His mother can't even afford to buy him a glove. And he eventually plays Little League, and he's really good. And he's so good he gets a scholarship to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And he's so good he gets drafted by the San Diego Padres. And he's so good he helps the St. Louis Cardinals win a World Series. And 12 years ago, when Ozzie Smith walked into the Hall of Fame, he said during his induction speech, and in part I quote word for word, he said, I've always been told how average I can be. Always been criticized about being average. But I want to tell you something. I stand here before you, before all of these people, not listening to those words, but telling myself every single day to shoot for the stars, to be the best that I can be. Good enough isn't good enough if it can be better, and better isn't good enough if it can be best. That's the California Maritime way. Good enough isn't good enough if it can be better. Better isn't good enough if it can be best. Let me close with a very personal story that I think will bring all this into focus. Wisdom will come to you in the unlikeliest of sources, a lot of times through failure. When you hit rock bottom, remember this. While you're struggling, rock bottom can also be a great foundation on which to build and on which to grow. I'm not worried that you'll be successful. I'm worried that you won't fail from time to time.
What's really weird about dreams, and almost impossibly weird, is that you're an observer in the dream. It's like a dream is something that happens to you. Well, you're dreaming it, theoretically, so how is it that you can be an observer? It's almost like you're watching a video game or a movie, but you're producing it, at least in principle, although the psychoanalysts would say, well, no, not exactly. Your ego isn't producing it, your unconscious is producing it. It's a different thing. It's a different thing. And
I remember going, all the work I put into this, all the hopes my family and I had, all the travel ball, everything we did, all the games, all the great plays, all the errors I made, the fly ball I dropped at Fullerton, you know, all that stuff. I was going to get drafted, then I did all that stuff, right? The guys I played with, over. Like a flicker, man. Like a flicker, that crap was over. And we're on that bus ride back, and I remember thinking, man, I should have tried harder. I should have played harder. I should have given this more. You know that stuff guys do, man. You're running sprints. There's 2 dudes who run every sprint full speed, and then there's the dudes who run 80%, 6 of them. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? He's kind of cool. You know, doesn't matter. I'm not the fastest guy, so no one will know when I don't win the sprints. You know those guys. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? This is a guy kind of doesn't really catch the ball on his throwing side in the outfield. When he's one, he catches it over, does everything wrong, throws it back. That's the thing that costs a guy getting thrown out at third and you lose by a run, because you just practice like that. Guy in the bullpen is kind of like not really focused. He's just kind of getting loose, right? Instead of just laser focused on everything he's doing all the time. Right? You don't want to leave here. You don't want it to end, whether it ends in the big leagues, it ends in the minor leagues, it ends here, or you never even get on the field this year. Okay? Having wondered whether you gave it all you got, because it's going to transfer into the man you become when you leave here, and most importantly, it's going to be your identity. When you get tired, when you get fatigued, when you get down, when you're in a slump, it's your habits, rituals, routines, and your standards that carry you through. And if you don't have good habits, you don't have good rituals, you don't have good routines, always in your life you will fall down in bad times, in slumps and fatigue and in stress.
He said to have an extraordinary life, you got to have an extraordinary psychology, right? Extraordinary psychology means you got to live in an extraordinary state. To be in an extraordinary state, you got to condition your nervous system, your body, your physiology and focus to be at their best. Do you agree with this? Yes or no? Then to do that, though, you can do that. Why doesn't everybody? Not because you can't. We all have the ability. It's because of our standards. I remember a time early in my career, I was about 24, and I went to do a seminar in Boston. And in those days, a big seminar for me was like 125 people. It was a 3-day seminar, and we worked around the clock, and people made such extraordinary changes in their life. And at the end of it, I was feeling so fulfilled. I was thinking, my God, I'm 24, maybe 25 at the time. And I am so happy.
Last time I took English class, I got a fail. And my English teacher said I was the weakest writer she ever met in her entire life. The last time I took a speech class, same year, I got a D- in speech, and my speech teacher said, Lisa, quote unquote, I recommend you never speak in public, that you get a desk job. So that was the beginning of my life. That was my 19-year-old experience. And then I go on and I'm trying to figure it out. I was obedient. I went and got a job in accounting. I was in the collection department for 7 years. Y'all don't know I'm dangerous to accounting. I'm just dangerous. And I'm in collections, and you know, you should never put a broke person in collections. Never, because everybody's reasons sound good to me. It might sound funny, but it was real. Not only did I say, girl, don't you worry about paying that, I'm gonna take your name off the list. Somebody went to jail because I was in I got fired from 5 different jobs. Yeah. And then I got pregnant with my son unexpectedly. And then at 8 months, my son's father went to prison. I had to get on government's assistance to have my baby. I was on WIC, Women, Infant, and Children, to feed my child. And when my son was 8 months old, I went to the ATM to get $20 out the bank because I didn't have any Pampers for him. And in order to get $20 out, you got that $20 in. I had $11.42. And I still can't tell the story without getting emotional because it's my story. For 2 days, I had to wrap my son in a towel. But something happened, Steve, in those 2 days. I was at rock bottom. I was broke, and I was broken. Inglewood, California. My son laying on his back at 8 months. I have a towel over him, and I have my hand on his stomach saying, don't you worry, Jaylani. Mommy will never be this broke again. And I made a decision. I was bankrupt. And every stinking thinking I had, I was bankrupt and trying to protect my pride. I was bankrupt and trying to be all that in a bag of chips and a bowl of grits falsified. I was bankrupt and trying to not ask anyone for help. I was bankrupt in everything that was holding me and keeping me where I was. I've always talked a good game, but I wasn't doing anything with my gift. And all that thing about potential, I was tired of having potential. I wanted to have my now. And I looked at that baby at 8 months and I said, I want to transform your life. Because you didn't ask to come into this chaos. As an African-American male child in South Central Los Angeles, with a single mother whose father's in prison, he had a 66% chance of going to prison himself. Not on my watch. Not on my watch. So if I have to be willing to drastically transform myself so that I can become the woman that I know I can be.
Right.
And that's what I began to do. I was radical.
What did you do, Lisa? What did you do to change your life?
first, I realized I couldn't grow with people who were struggling like me. That whole, I don't want to leave nobody behind. No, I don't want to stay with y'all.
Right.
You don't even want to be here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be the queen of this block.
Yeah.
And I became okay with the fact that it doesn't make me any less committed to my community, committed to my culture, committed to my family. The best thing I can do for you is not stay here with you.
That's right.
When I've got that, I went to places I'd never seen before. I went to conferences where people were talking about money, talking about prosperity, talking about, it was like, no habla español, what y'all talking about? ROIs and PPMs and term agreements and capital fundraising and bottom lines and what is it? I'm gonna stay until I learn what you're talking about. I went to the same conference 42 times. And there I raised $532,000 in capital for my company to start my dream. And my dream was to transform teen lives. I want to teach teens how to fall madly in love with themselves and how to make integrity-based decisions. And I got it funded, and I started working. And that was the beginning of me rescuing myself. I realized that I am my rescue. No one else is my rescue. I am my rescue.
That is, see,